just like some projects you've had before, databases are going to be mimicked off of a business process or business rule. How we do that is going to take a while, number one, to make sure that our design, number two, is frankly complete. So we have to really make sure that we have as brief as possible, concise and unambiguous description of all the policies, the procedures, or the overall principles or business process that a database is going to have to handle. So you have to create and enforce actions. Any type of action that a customer or an end user is going to be able to do, no matter if that end user is literally the person that's in the trenches or the managers, those processes are going to have to be mimicked in this database. Security, we talked about that before. Segregation is another one. We have to make sure that we understand all that. Because think about it. A customer may generate invoices. Think they're buying stuff off Amazon. You want to make sure they have that. Customers are going to have, they're going to need access to things, to products or whatever. That's pulled from a database. So I don't want you to think that this is going to be a one-way business application where you're providing. The users are going to be requesting, and we need to be able to give them that information. Can you imagine if Amazon didn't give any information on products they had? They wouldn't make money. But that's only part of the process. The other part is shipping the darn thing, charging your bank account all that money for the stupid stuff that you buy. But anyway, that's really what's happening behind the scenes is a give and take of data. Now, it really means that the database designer is going to need to do some research. And that is a part of the business process, is really understanding what's happening behind the scenes when you're trying to make money in a business, because that's what we're all going to be doing eventually, unless you do education. But anyway, now, this will help establish the business rules, the database entities, the relationships, the constraints. This is what's going to help drive and build a complete and thorough database. Now, we get to talk about discovering the different rules. The main resources that you're going to get this from is from managers, policymakers, department managers, written documentation, and yeah, direct interviews. Frankly, was one of my best parts. I loved working with people and see the process that they were doing. So I really walked around with people and said, okay, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. Man, this could be done a lot easier. That's part of the process of building it, the discovery process of the business rules/plan. Reasons for identifying all of this is standardizing some views of the data. You know, why create the same thing 10 times, recreate the same thing 10 times when you only need it once, and everybody understands that view. The interesting part about that, though, is that and I'm kind of skipping this for 1 second here, is that with end users, we have to be careful because their views may not be all the same, meaning, as you know, those that are on the phones and the trenches, they're not going to have as much access to those that are just directly above them in a supervisory role. They're all going to have their little aspects. So it's something that you really have to, in the discovery process, it's really, I enjoyed it a lot. But it can be difficult to figure out, okay, why are we doing it this way? Okay, well, they have their reason, they have this reason. Whew, it's a breath. But to me, it was fun. To me, it was fun. But anyway, back to reasons for identifying all of this. All of this will assist the designers in making sure that you have a database that doesn't just work, but it also fits with the different end users that happen to be really working on this business application. When we're translating everything that we've learned from that discovery process, now we have to go ahead and create the stage of identifying the entities, the attributes, the relationships, and the constraints. And I just talked about this, but we have nouns and verbs, and the nouns, person, place, or things are usually translated into our entities. The verbs are translated into our relationships between the entities. And by the way, it doesn't have to be just two entities that can be related. It could be, one can be, have many relations with different entities within the database. It happens all the time. And relationships are bidirectional. You know, we can have instances of B that are related to one instance of A. Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's going to happen that way. They need to be bi-directional when it comes to our types of relationships. That's something we have to think about. So I wanted to show you an example of what I was talking about when it comes to the nouns and the verbs and stuff like that. So think of I think a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory, and that's why we do a conceptual model of everything first, because I bet you can kind of figure out what this sucker was doing with all of the nouns and all of the verbs that are happening in this single picture. I bet you can identify what the entity names are going to be. I bet you can identify what the attributes are going to be. It's pretty easy to figure out, isn't it, when it's in a picture form. And these are all the things that we have to worry about in the business model anyway. So here it is. We can also make adjustments to it if we had to. Not a big deal when it comes to that. Now, naming conventions, and again, notice from above, the entity name requirement is going to be descriptive and unique. Now, even these, they're descriptive enough, but anyway. Use terminology that is familiar with the users. Don't go crazy on naming these different names that really might be better for you as a programmer, but for the business process itself, the name needs to be simple enough and unique enough to basically be up there. The attribute names require to be a descriptive data represented by the attribute. Well, you might have had that in doing a little bit of programming before, so that shouldn't be too bad. And then the proper naming. This facilitates communication between the different parties, and by parties mean they really buy the different entities, so that you know there's going to be orders consists of order details. You know that employees are going to handle orders. Shippers are going to ship orders. Notice the verbiage that we have in here, the nomenclature is not going to be too difficult for even those that are in the trenches or those that are, with the collar on in their own office will be able to understand. And that's important when you're developing this for their business model.